Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep into a framework that has literally defined corporate strategy for decades. Whether you're leading a massive Fortune 500 company or just trying to chart out your own personal career path, growth is never truly optional. But here's the catch. How do you actually grow without risking everything you've already built?
Well, let's kick things off with a brilliant quote from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. In it, the Red Queen tells Alice, "Now here, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that." It's a great line, right? And H. Igor Ansoff, who was a brilliant applied mathematician, actually used this exact quote in his landmark 1957 Harvard Business Review paper. He used it to perfectly frame the relentless, unavoidable need for corporate growth. And that brings us to the million-dollar question for any business student, entrepreneur, or corporate strategist out there. How does a business run twice as fast just to survive? How do you systematically plan for that kind of expansion without, completely sinking the ship? Because as we're going to see, just running blindly into the dark is a guaranteed recipe for disaster. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll officially meet the Ansoff Matrix. Second, we'll explore the 3 safer growth paths. Third, we'll tackle the massive diversification risk. Fourth, we'll dig into forecasting profit and stability. And finally, we'll wrap up with its limitations and some real-world practical uses. All right, Section 1, meet the Ansoff Matrix. So what exactly is this thing? The Ansoff Matrix, which you might also hear called the Product/Market Expansion Grid, is an incredibly intuitive 2x2 framework. As I mentioned, Ansoff published it back in 1957. He created it as a way to easily conceptualize the level of risk associated with different growth strategies. Basically, it gives management teams a clear way to visualize the levers they can pull when they're evaluating future growth. Picture it like this. You've got existing products and new products on one axis, and existing markets and new markets on the other. The true genius of this table is how it categorizes your strategy into 4 distinct boxes, where the risk escalates the further you move away from your familiar existing products and your core customer base. You start out in the safest corner, and step by step, you venture out into the unknown. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 safer growth paths. Let's look at the paths that keep a business relatively close to home. On one hand, you have market penetration. This is absolutely the least risky move. You're simply selling more of the exact same products into the exact same markets you already know. Think of a local grocery chain just dropping their prices a bit to grab more market share from a competitor. But then, compared to that, you have product development. This is where you leverage your hard-earned brand loyalty by creating totally new products for your existing market. An example would be a popular beauty brand that already sells to 20-somethings, deciding to launch a brand new hair care line aimed at that exact same demographic. They know the customer inside and out, it's just the product that's completely new. Okay, but what if we flipped that equation? What happens when you take a highly popular existing product and drop it into a totally new geography? Like, say, Lululemon making the strategic decision to aggressively expand its athleisure wear into the Asia-Pacific market. Well, that is called market development. You're expanding into new customer segments or entirely new regions, but you don't need to pour heavy investments into R&D because the product itself is already finished. Now sure, setting up foreign logistics or targeting a totally new demographic definitely carries some risk, but it's heavily mitigated. Why? Because you were scaling a product with a proven roadmap. You already know people love the product, you just need to find new people to buy it. Which brings us to Section 3, the diversification risk. To really understand this dangerous, uncharted territory, we have to look at the historical data Ansoff used to justify taking these huge risks. His study of the 100 largest U.S. corporations back in 1909 is just fascinating. By 1948, only 36 of those original 100 massive giants had survived at the top. Think about that. Why did the rest fall? Because they totally failed to adapt to technological obsolescence. Railroads lost out to automobiles and airplanes. Traditional textiles lost out to synthetics. Basically, standing still is a death sentence. So, to survive that kind of relentless, brutal corporate churn, companies are sometimes forced into the 4th quadrant, diversification. This is the absolute highest risk endeavor because it requires both new products and new markets simultaneously. You're completely breaking away from your past business experience. You can attempt this through concentric diversification, sticking to somewhat similar product lines, horizontal diversification, using unrelated products but relying on the same customer base, Or the big one, conglomerate diversification, where you are venturing into entirely unrelated products and entirely unrelated markets.
And this presents a massive existential choice for diversifying companies. Do you rely on sourcing synergies in related diversification, like, say, a leather shoe producer deciding to start making leather car seats because they already know how to work with leather? Or do you seek pure financial stability across totally different industries in unrelated diversification, like that exact same shoe producer investing heavily in consumer packaged goods just to escape the highly cyclical, up and down nature of the high-end shoe business? Let's dive into Section 4, Forecasting Profit and Stability. You see, Ansoff didn't just give us a neat conceptual grid. His original 1957 paper provided a deeply mathematical rationale for why companies must take these giant leaps. Just compare a smooth, foreseeable trend forecast against a sudden, unpredictable contingency. Businesses are generally great at looking at trends, right? Economic trends, manufacturing costs, population growth. They can chart out nice, smooth curves. But contingencies? Those are sudden, massive drops. A technological breakthrough by a rival, an economic depression, a sudden shift in international relations. These are things you absolutely cannot easily put on a calendar. Ansoff pointed out that businesses often foolishly ignore contingencies simply because they seem unlikely or are just too hard to predict. He wrote that while business planning emphasizes trends, military planning emphasizes contingencies. He brilliantly compared a business planner to a supermarket manager who spends all day optimizing daily operations, but spends zero time planning for a fire even though they buy fire insurance. The military, by contrast, is like the fire engine company. For them, the fire, the unpredictable contingency, is the whole point. He even quantified this need for stability mathematically, with what he called a stability factor. Ansoff proved that a company must ensure its lowest sales during a sudden slump never ever drop below a certain threshold of its expected trend. Let's say your stability factor is 0.3. That means even in a catastrophic contingency, your sales shouldn't dip below 30% of what you expected under normal conditions. If your current product lines can't guarantee that level of stability, mathematics literally dictate that you must diversify into new markets just to protect the company.
And finally, Section 5, Limitations and Practical Uses.
Before we wrap up, let's bring this incredibly powerful framework back down to earth for a second. The Ansoff Matrix is legendary, for sure, but it does not exist in a vacuum. It has some real limitations. First, it faces isolation challenges. The grid completely ignores competitor countermoves. You might decide to penetrate a market, but your competitors aren't just going to sit there and let you take it. They will react. Second, there's a logical consistency challenge. Some business scholars argue that creating a truly new product almost inherently creates a new market anyway, which arguably makes that separate diversification quadrant a bit redundant. Yet, despite those criticisms, the structure of this matrix is so incredibly universal that you can even apply it directly to your own personal career development. Seriously, think about it. Market penetration? That's expert development, using your same skills in your same industry to get a promotion. Market development is an industry transfer, taking your current skills to a totally new industry. Product development is functional skill development, learning new skills with staying in your current field. And diversification, that's full retraining, packing up, learning entirely new skills, and jumping into a brand new industry. So I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on today. Where does your business, or even your own career, currently sit on the Ansoff Matrix? Take a really close look at the grid, evaluate the very real risks of just standing still, and ask yourself, where do you need to start running twice as fast just to survive? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.